Good evening and welcome to the Milford Select Board meeting of September 30th, 2024 at 6 p.m. in Room 3 of Town Hall. Our first agenda item is the signing of the warrant,
Jim, I make a motion that we sign the warrant for September 16, 2024.
And I second that, Mr. Chairman.
and I would make that unanimous. Our next agenda item is approval of the regular session minutes from September 16, 2024.
Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the regular session meeting September 16, 2024.
And I second that, Mr. Chair.
And I would make that unanimous as well. And our last agenda item, under agenda item A, is approval of executive session minutes for September 16, 2024.
Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the executive session minutes for September 16, 2024.
And I second that, Mr. Chairman, as well.
And I would make that unanimous. Our next agenda item is public hearings. We do have a public hearing this evening involving Shiv Om Krupta Incorporated, doing business as Purchase Street Market, amendments to the package store all alcohol beverage license, change of stockholder interest. And we do have their attorney here this evening via Zoom, Thomas Truax. Are you on, Mr. Truax?
Am on, if you can hear.
Yep.
We
We
can
can,
hear you,
yes, sir.
sir. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the board, again, Attorney Tom Truax of Salem. I'm appearing on behalf of the licensee Shiv Om Krupa Inc., who are doing business as Purchase Street Market, and their address is 89 Purchase, Milford. Find Mr. Tom Patel. He's the current president of the corporation and current 50% shareholder. And the application before you is simply a change of ownership interest in the corporation and a change of one of the owners of the officer positions, namely secretary. Mr. Patel's sister, Reshma Patel, has gotten married and moved to Connecticut and no longer wishes to be a part of the corporation. Or she is transferring her 15% interest to her brother, Mr. Kishan Patel, and she also was the secretary of the corporation, and that position now will also be held by her brother, Mr. Kishan Patel. So now Mr. Kishan Patel will be a 65% owner, shareholder in corporate. He will now be the president and president and secretary of the corporation, and approval of those is what and we'd be glad to happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Before I turn it over to the board, we do have a department head review form, which has been filled out and submitted to the board. Building commissioner, RB zone, pre-existing, non-conforming use, building and restrooms are not accessible. Town planner, okay, no change of actual use. Treasurer, no outstanding taxes or liens. Fire chief, no objections. Police chief has approved. Board of Health has no objections. With that, I will turn it over to the board.
Mr. Chairman, I'll also add to that they submitted a certificate of good standing from Department of Revenue, the state, as far as taxes, as well as workers' comp, as required by the ABCC. This is simply, Mr. Chairman, a rearrangement of the internal operations and affairs of their corporation. So I would make a motion that we approve the amendments to the package all alcohol beverage license, change of stockholder interest, and change of offices for Shiv Om Krupa, Inc., doing business as Purchase Street Market.
And Mr. Chairman, I would second that too, especially to where all the papers are in order, all the applications are in order, as well as the approval of the department heads had no objections or approved without any bias, so I second that.
This being a public hearing, is there anybody in the audience here for the public hearing? Is there anybody on Zoom? So nobody on Zoom, nobody in the audience, therefore I will make the transfer unanimous.
Very good. And good luck, Mr.
Thank you
Patel.
very much.
Thank you, Attorney
Thank you,
Truax.
Attorney Truax. Thank you very much. And we do have a scheduled appointment tonight. We have our police chief here who has given us a presentation for no parking recommendations. Chief Hasino, good evening.
Good evening, Chairman. Good evening, gentlemen. So you remember we came to the board, I think it was almost a month ago now.
29th.
29th, to try to address some parking concerns. I think, you know, it's hard to explain it, right? A picture's worth 1,000 words. Well, a PowerPoint's got to be worth 1,000,000 words. So what we did is we put this together for you and for the public. It's going to go through a couple things before we get started on it. It's going to show some problem locations, and it's going to show some drone footage, which I'll explain when we get to it. And I decided the best way to do a lot of this was get a couple videos of actually in a vehicle, trying to navigate as we're turning, to show you what I'm talking about. Because I think, a lot was lost in translation, and once we look at this, we can make some decisions. So, the difference is night and day. That should be a Jeopardy phrase. And why is that so important? Because if you drive down some of the roads during the day, there's no issue. Okay? A lot of the issues we face, especially on Grove Street, is people simply coming home from work. And there's just too many vehicles on the road. I spend a lot of time trying to, talk to people and find out, what time of day. And the big thing for us, believe it or not, is, people think that calling the police is a nuisance for stuff like this. It's not, because if officers are tied up at the moment, at least we can log it and we can track it. So if there's one thing I can ask is, to the public, keep calling. You have a traffic concern, call. And the follow-up to that is when I do talk to people, I try to, personally interact with as many people as I can. They're like, well, we called, but nobody came out. Well, they might not have came out right then and there, okay? But it helps us track these things. So let me talk about what we have going on here. So areas in town with parking abuts the intersection are increased from motor vehicle accidents. This is common sense, and this is something, the board needs to consider. When you're trying to pull out of an intersection, I think that's the time you're most apprehensive. Before my tenure, and I'm sure it was even before, I don't know, or maybe Chief O'Laughlin made it 20 feet. I don't know if that was something that was before then.
Yeah, I think it was increased at some point.
Yeah. So, but now, 20 feet's just not going to do it. So the specific areas of concern of the intersection, the residential parking, congestion, we've seen 27 pedestrian strikes since 2020. That's 27 motor vehicle versus pedestrian. Not motor vehicle versus motor vehicle. Not motor vehicle versus motorcycle. Not motor vehicle versus, bicycle. This is pedestrian strikes, okay? There's 27 of them. The demonstration is going to also show us that many of these intersections, vehicles, are forced to cross solid double yellow lines to park past vehicles. That's kind of what I'm talking about, right? It's indirectly sending vehicles into the opposite lane of travel. All right, and you'll see in one of these videos, we're trying to pull out, there's a vehicle parked, and as you're doing it, there's a vehicle coming down here that got sent in the opposite lane. So now nobody's in the lane they're supposed to be in. Okay, and that's a problem. And a big thing, we get a lot of phone calls, is residents unable to access their own driveways. And I think as I get up there in age, I appreciate this a little more, especially at night. It's harder to pull in and out of a narrow driveway. The houses in Milford, at least the section that I live in, they're very old houses. It's an older neighborhood. And the way the driveways were designed, you're not pulling a big truck in there. And when you have people parking around it, it makes it hard. Can I have the next slide? Okay. All right, so this is South Bow and Grove Street. You can see what we have is nighttime versus daytime, right? And if you look at obviously this is the nighttime footage that's in infrared. Okay, this is the daytime footage on Grove Street. There's a significant parking issue. All the vehicles parked on South Bow, and then the vehicles parked on Grove Street. And if you can imagine, So you have all these vehicles parked here, okay? This is a vehicle traveling right here, all right? This is a vehicle traveling. What lane are they in? We're in the opposite lane.
The opposite lane, yeah.
Right.
They're naturally put in the opposite lane, okay? And as you get further down, it's more cumbersome, but don't go ahead yet. Pulling out here, okay, if you're pulling out here, trying to pull out, now to try to navigate this turn either way, you have vehicles here. So now this vehicle's coming up the street, and it automatically is going to put this vehicle traveling towards the end of the road on that side of the street. So basically here. Now during the day, right, during the day, Grove Street doesn't look that bad. Doesn't look that bad. But at night, it's a whole different picture. Can I next slide? All right. Franklin at Grove, Forest at Grove. Forest at Grove in about, I'd say in about 2 hours, you're not going to be able to drive down.
It's already there.
It's already there? Okay. Well, we're lucky enough, we have some residents here today that I hope we're going to speak on behalf of this. But look at Forest and Grove Street during the day. Nothing. There's nobody parked there. All right? Franklin and Grove at night. Look at how you have the cars. All in the corner, right? And I'll argue that these cars are within the 20-foot,
Barrier.
yeah, the bylaw that we have, the traffic law, so they're not affected. But still, if you can see how it unnaturally pushes you out into the other lane of traffic, coming out either way. Next slide. All right, Water Street. All right, trying to come out into Water Street at night. Horrible. Okay? Parking, 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 parking. All these vehicles, these are all parked. Look at this vehicle traveling. This is a good depiction of it. Where's that vehicle?
It's the wrong lane.
Right,
On Water Street.
right. He's in the wrong lane on Water Street coming down the street. Okay? During the day, different picture. All right?
No, it's not.
Next slide. All right, Water Street, the parking at night. All up and down. All up and down, parking at night. Again, exiting here. Going this way, this way. We changed the traffic regs, so these vehicles right here, they're already in violation. But this vehicle here is in violation, right? And it automatically causes you. So if I'm coming up this way on Water Street, and you're coming down, well, I'm going to hug on this side, you're going to hug on this side, and it's going to put us in direct path with each other. And, you know, you can make the argument of leapfrogging back and forth, not when there's cars parked on the whole length of the road.
Right.
You're not doing that, okay? And obviously, it looks completely different during the day. There's Oliver and Water. Okay? Fair and Water. Same thing. Same issue. Parking, 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 all of this. Parking. And it unnaturally puts you on the other side. Pearl Street down here in Lincoln, at night, okay? During the day, sure. During the day, you have some parking, okay? But none here. There's no parking here. At night, once these people start to park here, especially at this intersection over at Lincoln, that's what it's going to do. It's going to unnaturally put people over this way. It's going to put this motorist here this way. And you can't even leapfrog because as you see here, it's going, I mean, that section and into that intersection, it's just way too much. Next slide. Okay? Winter Street, Granite, parked all on here. During the day, not as bad. School Street, same thing. It's going to unnaturally put each vehicle, this vehicle's going to go here for travel, and this vehicle's going to go this way to travel. Now, during the day, it's busy enough. But as you can see during the day, you don't have all that parking here. Nobody's parking there. they're almost rectifying it themselves without having alternate side. Next one. All right, South Main, Leonard, Grove, all right, Fruit in Maine. Okay, watch this video clip, North Forest Spring. How do you get down the street? Right, car coming the other way. West Street, Union. Trying to turn on to Union from West Street.
Yeah,
Look,
yeah.
come right off. You stop it there for a second? Nope. So you're on West Street, you're trying to turn to Union Street. You stop? Okay. Look at what you have here. How do you mitigate that? You have all these cars there. You're on West Street trying to execute that turn onto Union Street. Okay? You have cars behind you on West Street. Cars coming down West Street. Not to mention, you're trying to execute this turn and you can't even get off of West Street because you have vehicles parked on both sides.
Yeah.
Go ahead, you can go through it. Well, And the point of leapfrogging, right? How do you leapfrog and let the other person go when you're in the middle of executing your turn? Now when they try to come out, you're all there at the intersection. You're stuck at the intersection. Parked cars, trying to come out.
Yeah, it's a tough one, too.
Right here,
Yep.
coming off from Bancroft on the water. How do you, now, right here's perfect stop. Okay, this is exactly what I'm talking about. You have this person trying to come out here to execute the turn onto Water Street. You're coming out of Bancroft Street, trying to execute the turn on the Water Street. These cars, right now, are legally parked. Right now, they're not infraction. So who stops? Who goes? You're just all, and I mean, I know saying that we add an ambulance now or a fire truck would be dramatic, but let's add an ambulance or a fire truck to it. When I'm stopped here and, you know, the other person stopped here and you have an ambulance trying to come down Water Street or trying to come up behind you, it's not going to work. Go ahead. And then we actually wanted to take a right there. But
Yeah, you couldn't.
Couldn't, so we took a left. Right there. Where are you going to go? Oh, you can't see it, the post. It's all right, you can play it through.
I can tell you have to back up.
Right? This is the problem. And there's too many vehicles to do that whole, I'm going to stop, let you go, he's going to stop, we're going to go. There's too many vehicles on each, you know what I mean? I mean, there are some streets that, you know, if you took a hard enough look at it, you could almost say you can't park on the street at all.
At all,
They're
yeah.
so narrow. You know?
Look at that.
This vehicle stopped waiting, right? That vehicle has to stop. How do you navigate that? You face head on with another vehicle
Yeah.
because it naturally puts you in the path. So, a couple things before we talk about this. Since 22, we've had an increase of 32% of the moving citations, so just under 6,000. Parking violations since 22 are up 29%. And this is interesting, motor vehicle crashes were up 8% since 22. I think these numbers are very telling. It's simple. Milford's an older town. You know, we've talked about it before. You know, when I was younger, it was a big deal to have your own car. You couldn't afford it. People couldn't afford it. Now, you know, people are affording vehicles a lot easier through financing, or somebody passes a vehicle down. And, you know, I can remember there being one car, you know, for the younger people in the house. Well, now everybody has their own vehicle. And, you know, that's just the problem. And we're trying to, you know, take a town that is so old when it comes to our infrastructure, and we're trying to accommodate this massive influx, first of all, of vehicles, and then second of all, traffic. You know, our traffic's increased dramatically in the town of Milford. You know, certainly since I was in high school, but certainly since I moved back in 2007, I've seen an uptick in motor vehicle accidents, and certainly the parking is an issue. There was just a lot of discussion from one of the Facebook groups about the parking. I know that you know, the town administrator gets a lot of phone calls about parking. That's how we started this. And they get a lot of phone calls about traffic. And I think that on the streets that I proposed before, alternate side, I think that that's a good start, a good bite at the apple. But those are the numbers, and, you know, we can discuss it however you want.
Very good.
So again, Chief, what was your recommendation? I'm sorry.
So the list of streets that I had, you know, Union Street needs to be parking one side, Grove Street needs to be parking on one side. And I think that the intersections, we need to go from 20 to 30 feet. Distance from the intersection. And, you know, a couple things that are interesting, I've had a lot of discussions with people parking or overtime parking, and they say to me, look, for $25, I'll park there. I think we need to consider raising the fee. I don't know if the board does that, if it has to go to town meeting, but I think the fee on a parking ticket needs to increase. Because you go anywhere and park during the day for $25, are you kidding me? You know, I had to go into Boston. You know, I know Boston's a quantum leap for business not long ago, when it was, you know, $80-something to park. So I think those are some good starts, and certainly I'd like to continue with, you know, going through each section of town and making some recommendations and working with the town administrator's office, you know, because we get these complaints. And I think we have some people here who would like to be heard on this.
So just real quick, and before I turn it over to the board, how is parking on one side going to solve the issue? Still going to make people have to go in, get around those vehicles, though.
So, but case in point, if you looked on where they both naturally straddle the center line, if you have parking one side, that whole process would move over. It's not that I'm moving you this way, I'm moving you this way. It's taking both of us and kind of sliding us over. Take the turn off of West Street onto Union Street. It's only like that because you have parking on both sides. You know, if people park on both sides of, and there wasn't, we didn't shoot it overhead, but if you park literally on both sides of West Spruce Street, you cannot physically drive through it. You cannot. One car at a time, you cannot. And, you know, when I bring up Whitney Street every time we have these conversations, you know, you can land a plane on Whitney Street.
It's a wide street.
It's a wide street. You can park trucks next to each other and fit a tractor trailer down the middle, no problem. But if you park two cars directly across from each other on West Spruce Street, you're not driving through that street. Ambulance, fire truck, forget it. I'm talking a regular passenger car.
Right.
So by giving us that one parking side, you're basically giving it a lane.
Okay, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense.
I mean, having it blocked, at least one
Right.
one lane to pass.
Right, yep.
Earl and Dr. Heller, do you want to make some comments, or?
Yeah, the other gentleman go first.
Let me just turn it over to the board. When the board's done, then I'll ask both of you to come up and make your comments, okay?
I have no issue in pushing back at intersections from 20 to a greater distance, you know, for purposes of a clear sight, a line of sight as well as the turning radius. And on those intersections that are either a T or an L, you know, that you can't park on the opposite side of that T or the L. But to say we're going to just take some of these streets, and we're going to make them all park on one side, I think we're just kicking the can down the road. Because they're going to have to go one block away to park their car. You know, it's very clear. The number of vehicles now, yes, everyone has a vehicle. Every high school kid has a vehicle. That's the facts of life. Has traffic increased? Yes. All you have to do is drive along Route 16 any given day, and even if you head out towards Mendon and Uxbridge, the traffic coming through Milford every morning is a long line, and it's a long line going back the other way.
Absolutely.
And that's why people in Milford learn how to go different back roads to get around. When we talked about the bypass road, if you live in this town, you know where the bypass road is. You know how to get around town. I just think you're going to put up no parking signs on this street, and all you're doing is moving them over to the next street, and we're going to be right back here having the same discussion. We've done that. We have done that. Go down to Haywood. You've done that. You want to put parking on one side of Haywood, you just open up a raceway. That's the other thing. So we can say, oh, this is where now the two cars can get by. You better believe they can. And the calls are going to be coming in that they're going like rocket ships down those streets. I have no problem in pushing back so that people see where they're going, that this car isn't causing this. You can paint the line down the center of the road on any street in this town, and you're going to cross over that line to get past parked cars. That's a fact. And we can say that day is different than night. Not really. If we want to talk Water Street during the day, there is a bottleneck there, very significant one. So what do? Put those people out of business? If we want to talk along Main Street, what do? Put those people out of business? People have to jockey their way through those areas all the time. All the time. You know, and I know what's going to happen. I saw it happen at Haywood and Mount Pleasant. We put up a lot of no parking around the park, you know, Votolato, and we came up, and then we put a lot of no parking in the intersection area and really pushed back. And what happened? They started parking on Mount Pleasant. And what did it do? It caused a nightmare for the highway department, particularly during storms. Because now you're coming down a hill with a big plow. That's frightening too. So I think to just go and say, and I don't disagree with you, Chief, there are streets that are so narrow. I mean, we've done that. We're just the turning off of Grove, you know, onto a side street. We all looked, and because of the stone wall, it would be difficult to get a fire engine even close. I have no difficulty with things like that. I just think to take, for instance, Union Street and say, we're going to make this where you have to park on this side. We're going to displace vehicles onto other streets. Because I don't know that there's enough parking spaces on those streets for the people that live there. And they're just going to go elsewhere. They have no alternative, right? So, and we've tried this of moving, put commercial vehicles or vans, and they have to be in the town lots, and then it was take them out of the town lots because you couldn't park to go to church. You're right, there's too many vehicles in town. And I'm just waiting for people to walk through the door and say they're willing to give up their vehicle. They don't want to own one. You know, it's really, I think we're taking a problem, we're just going to move it on some streets. We're just going to move it to the next street over, and we're going to have the folks there saying, why'd you do this to us? I have no problem with intersections, and I have no problem with enforcing it. I'm happy to go and look. Something in my mind tells me that there's a statute that regulates those fines. I know it does for handicap, but it's something to take a look at. And I know you're speaking about downtown.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that. But I think likewise for those people that park in areas such as those intersections, you know, I don't know. Some of these streets are just, go ahead, gentlemen.
Thank you. Tom, thanks for those comments, too. And like I said, it's something that is going to be complicated. It's a continuous work in progress. But like anything else, I mean, the town changed, and we have to change with it. And I feel as though that plan is a good plan. We can do, like I said, one step at a time. Doesn't have to be done all at once. And let's see how it works. Let's see, at least, let's give it a try. Let's, for instance, like the parking from 20 feet to 30 feet from the intersection. Fantastic. I mean, because that's one of the biggest problems. The other thing is, like you said, you're changing lanes and whatnot. I think if we could get the most narrow streets, start off with them first and see how it works out, and then progress from there, because it is definitely it's a safety hazard. It's something that's long overdue, and if we don't attack or at least try to address it today, it's going to be something that we're going to have to be living with for quite some time, and it's only going to get worse. So let's at least try to control it in some way, shape, or form, like your plan now. Again, pick some of the, you showed us a multitude of streets. Let's start off with the streets that are the most vulnerable, where we have to change lanes, or a child running out, or an emergency vehicle not being able to get to where they have to go in time, because time is very precious and every second counts. And if it even means someone has to walk a couple of blocks to their car, we can't put people's health and safety under their convenience. Just because they're inconvenient, you know, that doesn't mean anything either, you know. And then again, we have bylaws. Maybe we should start looking at our zoning laws a little better. Or I believe if someone is renting an apartment house, the landlord has to provide 2 parking spaces per apartment. See how that works. If there's 4 vehicles there, find another place for them to park. And again, and that's easy words to say, but let's probably think of areas where they could park. Just an idea. Okay, it's not etched in stone, but you have several acres where the Archer Rubber was. Why not make use of that for public parking? Even charge a fee of $100 a month for those who have a commercial vehicle who need to park there. You know, I mean, we have, in other words, we're having an answer for them as well. Where do I park? Well, we can have, like Tom mentioned a few years ago, when he was the police chief, he suggested parking on the public-owned parking lots. And it worked to some extent until people needed it for other reasons, but it worked a little bit. So maybe we should think a little outside the box and say, okay, this is what we would like to do for the public safety, but let's also try to provide something as well as an answer to their question, where else can I go? Instead of, like Tom said, the street over or 2 streets over where you're going to have a problem there. Let's solve the problem not only with parking, but let's solve the problem on the street parking, but let's solve the problem on where they can park legally and safely as well. But I think that was a great presentation, and it really hit home. Again, the town's changing. We have to change with it, or else we're going to be living with this for quite some time, and it's going to get worse. Thank you.
Before I make comments, I'd like to ask retired Police Chief Earl Wagner and Dr. Heller, you want to come up front and you have some comments you'd like to make?
Hey, how you doing? Very good to see you, man. Good.
I don't like these seats, by the way.
Yeah, well, it's,
Before I start, I have very deep respect for each and every one of you, what you said. But each and every street is unique in of itself.
Agree.
That's got to be taken into consideration before any decision is made, okay? Union Street's different schools different in Grove. I can take everybody in this room right now, I can drive up to Grove Street an hour from now, be cars parked on both sides of the road. But I can also tell you that all the cars that are parked on the odd numbers of that road have parking at their homes. Every house on the odd side of Grove Street, okay, has parking for 2 to 3 vehicles, except for one, and that's the rooming house. They have a back parking lot for 12 vehicles. Now, how do I know that? I've lived there for 60 years. In the last 6 months, I've sat there on my front porch. I've watched 6 cars get hit, their mirrors knocked down. One kid hit with a bike, but obviously he wasn't supposed to be here, so he just ran home, okay? The people on the opposite side, those people need the parking in front of their house. No argument. And I'm going to say something else. You can put everything you want under advisement, and I understand you have to put a lot of thinking into things. I spent one day working with a fireman to teach him how to get up on Poplar Street from Grove Street. But I had to get a guy move his car because he was parked on the odd number of the street. You cannot do the fire truck if that car is on the odd number of the street. So the house is going to burn. I'm sorry, we're under advisement. We're thinking about it, okay? You can go down South Main Street. You can take a left onto Forest Street. Chief, correct me if I'm wrong. You get to Grove Street and Forest Street, you cannot take a right-hand turn with a U-Haul truck, never mind a fire truck. You go down to South Main Street. You cannot take a left-hand turn to get onto Grove Street. It's impossible. It's a safety hazard. We're not talking about people's inconvenience. We're talking about safety, people dying. Maybe I'm raising my voice because I'm a little bit upset, okay? We sometimes have to put people at an inconvenience. I'm putting myself at an inconvenience because I'm on the odd side. I can't park in my house anymore. I got 5 kids, 10 grandchildren, 6 great-grandchildren. But they can park in my driveway. I can put 3 cars there if I have to. Okay? But I don't want to say I'm going to park in and then a fire truck can't get up Poplar Street. It's ridiculous. Okay, there are times that people have to understand. But if you go up Grove Street, on the right-hand side, the odd numbers, every house has parking for a minimum of 2 vehicles, and they're not using them.
Right.
So it's not people come from other neighbors sitting in there. The people on the other side, there's a couple that don't have parking because they have a driveway for 2 or 3 houses. They need the parking, okay? But I'm not going to object to somebody telling me I can't park in front of my house because the fire truck can't get up. That's ridiculous. And what the chief has done, he's talked to a lot of people in the neighborhood, okay? And I tell you right now, to the best of my, unless you go way down the other end, going towards South Main Street, you might get somebody complaining about it, but outside of that, you're not going to find people complaining about that. And the other thing you said about the bypass, what is a bypass going through Milford from Mendon and Hopedale? Do you know what it is? You're the chief, I'm asking you.
I'm
asking
sorry.
you.
Which way would I go if I was stuck up there?
Yeah.
I-
You go Grove Street. You want to sit there in the morning and count the cars? It's...
Right.
You wonder why?
I
Because the
appreciate
people
that.
aren't parked there anymore. They've all gone to work. That is the cutoff. I have relatives that work in Milford at the town hall. They go Grove Street. Now I could go to my house right now, sit there. It's like the highway. That's a bypass.
Yeah, the biggest cut through there is Depot Street.
Not
So there'd be no
anymore.
doubt.
Believe me when I tell you.
Surely is.
It used to be, I agree with you. But all I'm saying is, sometimes we have to make decisions that everybody's not happy with, but first of all, you have to make decisions for the safety of the people.
Absolutely.
That's the primary, your job, the chief's job, and the fire chief's job. I see the people, the drivers. I used to drive truck for many years. I helped them how to navigate the turn to get up Poplar Street from Grove Street. If there's a car there, they're not getting up, their house is going to burn. That is something that's not going to be on my shoulders because I said my piece. And all due respect for all of you. You got to start someplace. If you want to start in my home, okay? I'll park my 2 vehicles in my driveway, my kids can park with it. Use that as a test one. Down at the bottom of Grove Street, you know what I'm talking about. You can't get 2 cars down there most times of the day. You have to, you come up, past the police station, Franklin, you're going to make a left-hand turn, you have to pull over and wait because there's somebody come up. Next thing you know, somebody's coming this way. And I'm not exaggerating. I'm downplaying. And I'm saying, and if it's not taken care of, well, there was a big accident there about a year ago, but now when I tell you that, every week I go out there and pick up a mirror, okay? And I'm gonna start telling the people, tell the town, they can do something about this, fix it. The worse, the longer you let it go, the worse it's gonna get. Train the people now. I won't say any more because I'm probably talking too much, but stop and think about the people who live there and need safety vehicles to save them. That's my concern. You can't get a fire truck and out of that area right now. I don't know if you've talked to the fire chief, if he probably backed me up on that,
Yeah, absolutely.
okay? I'm not making it up. I've even trained one kid how to go, then back up and get to the street. And I'm like, I mean,
Thank you.
Dr. Haller? You-
Pleasure to be here. Thank you, board, for all they do.
Good to have you.
Thought the chief's presentation was very good. I've talked with the chief in the past, about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and we were talking, and he told me about this meeting. I grew up in Milford, I think a lot of you know that, and I was away, but I've been here since 1977, and I won't tell me how many years ago, but I grew up in Robbie's neighborhood, or he grew up in my neighborhood, whatever. His mother and I are classmates, so that's, but she was a much younger woman at that time, so okay, won't get in trouble with your wife, your mother. But I think that it's interesting, and kind of the elephant in the room that nobody's mentioned is that it's not only just the car themselves, it's the type of vehicles that we have today. Everybody's got 1 or 2 SUVs or pickup trucks or panel trucks, particularly in the old section of town. I live on Congress Street, as you know. House going north from me is a 3-apartment house. The other day, counted in, they have parking that as a lot of people have done, torn up their front lawns and paved it over, which is another whole different issue, with water runoff and everything else. But the thing is that I counted the other night, about a week or so ago, and for that one apartment, I counted 7 vehicles. They were all off the street, but a lot of times they're on the street. And the way my house is situated and driveway, and that driveway for that house, is that most of the time when my wife or I are coming out of our driveway, we can't, because there's a panel truck sitting on the, up from us or 2, and you have to get out into Congress Street almost to the line to be able to see that, so you don't get hit. And I don't know how many times over the years that we've missed, both of us, being hit because of the vehicles. My thing is that I know certain towns, they have limitations where somebody that has commercial vehicles, that they aren't allowed to park them in the residential area. They have to find some place to park it, and that might help with a lot of these older neighborhoods, because we know we've got 2 and 3 floor apartments in there, and so that there's a lot of trucks. A while back, I was turning down onto Pearl Street from Purchase, and I don't know, it must have been a cloudy day, but from the time I got onto Pearl Street until you first, till the 2nd Street by the church, down that way, I counted 9 panel trucks. You couldn't see anything or even barely get through that street. You had, with other cars coming. Everybody had to wait. When coming up, people let 2 or 3 cars come, then they got you on that. Yeah, but that's the way the world is. But I think we've got to do something. I don't relish you coming up with, there's no silver bullet to solve this problem. But I think we've got to, as Kelly said, got to kind of start somewhere. But I think we need to do that. It comes down to, we all talk about quality of life issues. It's the little things. Today, people, and particularly since COVID, everybody's is off the rails. And it's not a kind world out there.
Right.
And people take out their frustrations when they're in their car on everybody else. So I know that some of the things, as far as the spacing from the intersections, but also it should be with driveways. You can't park it on Congress Street. We've had cars that are 10 inches from my driveway. We've had it where at different times where you can't even, I can barely even get into my driveway because on both sides. We do have a crosswalk in front of our house. That saves a little bit of space, but I've had people that park on the crosswalk on the weekends because there's a party down the street, and that's an empty space. They don't care that it's a crosswalk across from Hale Avenue. So it brings a lot of danger. I think that you're on the right track. Might not happen this week, next week, or even 6 months, but I think you've got to start somewhere.
I agree with both you and Mr. Wagner. It's not don't do anything. It's not what I'm suggesting.
No,
what I'm
but-
suggesting is, I'm not in favor of just coming in and saying, okay, we're going to take this street and just abracadabra, you can only park on one side without any consideration of the displacement and just putting the problem one block away. To focus on, for instance, some things that Earl Wagner raised, when you talk about Grove Street, yes, up at the South Bow intersection, that is tough, and I go through there quite a bit. It's even tough as you go on the other end, Earl, towards, and Chief, towards South Main Street, and you have that curve. If they're parking on both sides, the people coming up the curve from South Main, they don't know you're coming the other way, and so you can see those conflicts, and that's what I'm getting at is, and Chief, I have no problem. All I'm suggesting is that you take a look and you say to us, this particular section of the street creates a problem, or this entire street because it's so narrow. And I'm okay with that. I just don't want to have a list of streets and we say, okay, this whole list, we're going to make it parking only on one side. And none of those residents had any input. None of those residents, when I say none, the majority, had no input that this was going to happen to them. And if people have parking, and you've mentioned that too, Chief, they have parking on their property, then, you know what, that puts them in a position where their argument doesn't hold water. And it's an easier thing to do, because then the displacement is on them. They could park in their own driveway, or they can walk 2 blocks, 3 blocks. Do I see municipal parking just springing up? No. Let's be realistic. They've talked about building a garage and doing all kinds of other things. They tore down buildings on Central Street to create parking, didn't build a single parking space. So, it really, that's my concern is all of a sudden, these stop, no parking signs just crop up like trees along all these streets, and people are, where do you want us to go? And that includes people that have lived here for a short time, whether they rent, and it includes people that have lived here their whole lives, elders. Are the elderly on a particular street going to get pushed from parking in front of their own home because somebody else that lives on the street beats them to the spot on a public way, and now they have to navigate 2 city blocks to get home? Those are the things that jump out at me. I have no problem with making it a greater distance. I'm happy to even take a look at the fines. As far as parking right up on driveways, there's already regulations that deal with that. There's already regulations that deal with being too close to someone's driveway or being too close to the crosswalks. And as the chief said earlier, it's a matter of people letting the police know that that's occurring. And yes, they're busy, but, they then refocus. That's what supervisors do. They refocus resources when they're available and say, get down and take care of this issue for these residents. I know right here on the other side of Town Hall, we had the issue, the trash truck couldn't get in to pick up people's trash because people parked on the corners. So if they can't get in, you're right, Earl Wagner. You can't get a fire engine if you can't get a trash truck in. So I understand the potential dangers, that it's not lost on me. I just don't want a carte blanche. All of a sudden, we take 10 streets and we say, you have to park on one side, and without any understanding of how this is going to affect that same neighborhood one street away. That's all I'm suggesting. I'm more than happy to extend distances, to deal with T intersections, L intersections, and the rest of it, as well as the chief has raised. There are some streets that are so narrow, and I'll give them that. Union Street, if you park right across from a driveway, you can't get in and out with an SUV. I understand that. You know, so, and we looked at that, Chief. You came to us and said, hey, you know, if they're across from a driveway, we ought to consider this, and we put it into the regulations. So I'm not saying no by any stretch of the imagination. I just don't want to move an issue from street A to street B. That's all.
Michael, yeah, and I understand what Tom's saying, too. But like I said, that's why we should at least get those that are most important, that has the highest degree of a safety hazard, and work with them first. You know, like Tom was thinking, we're not going to do the whole list right now. At least start off with those that are the most hazardous and the ones that's going to cause the most safety problems, and try them out, see how they work. And if they don't, we can, like a good managers, we can always go back to the drawing board and readjust. That's what it's all about. It's something new, we got to try it out. And again, we're doing it for the safety of the residents, the safety of our guests who come to town and the children and whatnot. But at least we should get at least some of the streets that you mentioned that you feel as though, as a police officer and a police chief, that are the most important, that should be adjusted, and let's start with them first.
And we should do it now. I don't have a problem with that. As well as those intersections, as I said, you know, pushing it back. And it may be that we actually have to, you know, stripe it, you know, because how many people understand that you have to park so many feet from an intersection?
Right, no, they don't.
You know, they don't. You know, so if it's a matter of the areas where we know it's prevalent, and then we have to consider striping it. And that way, there's no problem giving them a large parking ticket, or even towing. I don't have a problem making a tow zone, you know? So it's, from a safety perspective, and I'm not disregarding any recommendation you're making at all, Chief. I just want us to start out with, here's the biggest issue, and work our way down the list. It's not, no, it's just, I don't think we should do it just carte blanche across downtown.
Okay. Before I comment, Mr. Earl, you have...
I just want to say, in a roundabout way, we don't know, but we're agreeing, Chief Buckland, okay? You're saying start someplace. Start someplace where the safety is the most important thing, and also where the people can adapt the quickest. Like I say, on an odd number of Grove Street, 85 to 90% of the cars that are on the odd number, they have driveways. They live there. They're not using them. Now, sounds foolish because I'm one that's on the odd number. I'm not going to be able to park in front of my house anymore, but that's not the point. That's, to me, an ideal place to start, okay? Because those people have driveways. They can park 2 or 3 cars in their yard. But like most people like me get lazy. I'll pull in front of my house, okay? That would not disrupt the whole neighborhood. They would not have to go 2 blocks over to find a place to park. So I know, I agree with you, we got to start someplace. So where did we start? I'll leave that up to you people with the better minds and the more knowledge.
I'll leave it up to him, the chief.
So Earl, to make reference to your comment on Grove and Poplar, we had a resident file a complaint about a year ago with the Selectman's office, and I went up there with the fire chief, Mark Nelson, and he he actually showed me, and this is when we put the signs up to move people away from the intersection, but he actually showed me where they had to come up Grove, go by Poplar.
Amen, brother.
One fireman has to jump out of the truck. The guy, and I said to the chief, I said, well, meanwhile, the house is on fire.
That's what I was
And he
trying to
said, yeah,
explain
but
to the chief.
we can't get the truck up the road because the cars are blocked here. And I said, well, that's a serious safety issue. So I hear what you're saying, and we backed him up, but it still didn't take care of the problem. One firefighter's got to jump out of the truck to help the gentleman that's driving get the truck backed up the street.
And if there was a car parked across the street, right where you're talking about, he couldn't swing back and get out.
Right.
All right.
So I hear you 100%. Chief, the question I have for you is, you made reference in your presentation that there were some cars that were actually in violation, that you have,
That they're already in violation.
Right.
Right.
do we have the authority to not ticket them, to tow them?
So you can tow anything that's a public safety issue, right? We don't need to make it a tow zone if it's a public safety issue. So there's nothing that says if you pull up on Main Street, get out and jump out of your car and leave it in the main street, that it's a, public safety issue. If the police show up, yeah, we can tow your car. So certainly we can do that, but those are things that, I think because, like, Milford's known for trying to get the word out, for not being this pugilistic endeavor of punishing people, right? We just want to make this work. And, like Attorney O'Loughlin said, when I started this endeavor with your office, these people have driveways. I went out and talked to people. I mean, we didn't just throw this together, and I had a great conversation with a gentleman. I'm not going to say the street, and I said, how come your car's not in your driveway? Oh, my kid comes home, and then they got to get up and go to school and this and that. And you'll think, well, in my house on Cornell Drive, back when I grew up, my mother would say, listen, here's the keys to my car. Move it, because I got to leave for work before you get out of bed.
Right.
So make sure you move the cars. And, to me, that's not a big inconvenience to have some consideration and move your cars, but I do agree, with Attorney O'Loughlin. We don't want to kick the can down the road. We don't want to just cause a problem on this street and that street, so yeah, I think definitely Grove Street, we need to tackle that sooner than later.
The reason, Chief, that I asked that question is you made reference to having to go to Boston to do business, and it costs you $85 to
Yeah.
park your car. Well, if you had to get your car out of the tow yard
Yeah, it
at
would cost you
$85 or
something.
$100,
Yeah, right.
a $15
Sure.
parking ticket,
Right.
I think you'd pay attention.
Right.
And you make reference to we've tried to have this softer touch attitude. Well, you and I both know we've been dealing with a local business in town
Yep.
that we tried that over and over and over to the point where they just weren't listening. They were doing whatever they had to do and we finally had to take aggressive action. And now, amazingly, Monday morning, I happen to drive by. Monday mornings are their busiest time because everybody's coming in
Yep.
to get vehicles, and guess what? Everything was parked properly. They were jammed in, but
Right.
they were parked properly. So
Right.
I hate to say it, but maybe it's time we do get
Yeah.
rid of the softer touch and we take a tough approach. And I mentioned Haywood Street only because I witness it every single day, and your presentation was spot on. Vehicles parked, people are cutting across, people are coming the other way, but the people that are heading towards Route 16 are so aggravated by the time they get by the baseball field, they forget that there's an intersection at Mount Pleasant, and they go right through the intersection because they're out of their mind by the time they get there. And that's going to be a serious problem someday. And now, because we have people that are waiting to get picked up to go to work, not only could we have an accident there, a pedestrian could get hurt there. So I think, to Doctor's point, we got to start somewhere. We've got to start somewhere. We have to send a message that, and I hear what my colleague, Mr. O'Loughlin is saying, and I understand that it probably is going to put cars on other streets, and then we're going to have to address that. But I think, to the residents of this community, we have to take a stand. We have to make a decision. We have to try something, because it is a serious safety issue. And to Earl's point, and the biggest thing that we can't lose sight of, number one, is safety. If we can't get our police into a situation, we can't get our fire trucks into a situation, we can't get our ambulances into a situation, then shame on us. shame on us, because it's our responsibility to make sure that that can happen. And it'd be a sad situation of a medical emergency, and we couldn't get the proper vehicles there to take care of that situation. So I agree. I think what I'd like to do is open it to a motion. I think we need to start somewhere. Moving from 20 feet to 30 feet, that's easy. I think we have to take a stand on this parking situation to let the residents know that we are aware of it. We want to do something to correct it the best we can. We know that it probably is going to cause something else. To Mr. Mazzucchelli's point, well, we'll address that when that happens. But I think we have to start somewhere and send a message.
If you want, Mr. Chair, I can make a motion that we move forward with this.
Yeah, I want to just make, if I had just one question, the chief kind of hit on it briefly, but, you know, having been involved with Milford and on different boards and what have you, in the way the world is today, communication is a big problem.
Yes.
Communication, education. Whatever we do, or you do, you've got to let people know what's going on. Unfortunately, we don't have the daily news like we used to have, or the town crier, or whatever, where at least people did. But people aren't buying newspapers anymore. We don't have people like Ed Thompson around, where you always knew what was going on, whether you wanted to or not. But, you know, but people were aware more today.
Yes.
I'm somebody who's interested in it, and it's difficult. I'm not a person that sits on an internet and looks at the computer. The people that are doing that all the time are the younger people, and they don't care about municipal government. They don't care, it seems like the majority of them, the young ones, not paint them all the same brush, but they don't. But those are the ones that are looking at the computers all the time. People my era and a little younger perhaps, you know, we don't live and die by the cell phone and by the computer. So to me, it's important that you let people, whatever is done, we educate people, you know, just like even, you know, having articles out or even doing a mailings, let people know. I didn't know until I spoke to the chief what the distance is from driveways or intersections, and those aren't things that when we take the driving test that they ask you a question about. So, you know, you just kind of assume that you don't do that, but a lot of people don't. So just one thing today, as far as on traffic, when I was coming up from going to my house, and I came up by the town park, and it was late afternoon, and there was evidently, must have been a program at the school, and they were on Congress Street and turning down Walnut. And right at the corner, there was lines of cars all the way on the right-hand side going down the park. And there was a car parked waiting in the queue line that was right on the corner. And if you were coming up and wanted to make a left down to Walnut Street, you were in trouble. I mean, people just, it's like, you know, they shouldn't have been there. You know, if you're going to be, then park back on Congress and wait, but don't block the intersection.
Right.
You know, just so, I don't know, it's not a simple problem.
No, very complex. So I'm just going to make a motion, if that's okay with the board, that the chief move forward with this, you know, and based on those streets that he feels as though are the utmost importance to begin with. And of course, like Doc Heller just mentioned too, I think it's very important with a good education and awareness campaign before anything is actually started to the areas that you choose.
Of course.
Well, I think we have to address the distance from the intersections, the ability to not only erect the signs and in some instances make it a tow zone, but to also, if need be, put the hash marks on the roadways so that there is no excuse. The education's right there in front of them. So, you know you shouldn't park there. I would just, for me, like to know what streets we're talking about, because we talked about several streets here, you know, from Water Street to Winter to Granite, School, Fruit, Union Street, and Grove, and others. So I'd like to have a better sense of and the chief can say it tonight, my priority is these 3 streets first. And then we know exactly what we're looking at, because I wouldn't vote to just go and change to parking on one side of the street for 8, 9, 10 streets.
Exactly.
I just want to point out to the board, we are going to have a meeting next Monday. The chief, again, is on the agenda for a separate matter.
Yeah.
If you would like him to maybe refine
That's what I was gonna
his
say.
proposal according to what the board seems to be suggesting.
Sure.
And if the chief is willing and to
Yeah, sure,
come
well,
back
yeah, we-
and tackle it that night, maybe the motions could be more clear.
It
more
will. Yeah,
succinct,
like I said, it
more
should-
definitive, rather than
We could have a discussion based on the
just
streets that he picks as
suggesting
well.
to the board, that's all.
Yeah, I think the way that I'll go with it, and if you want to put it in writing, I mean, it makes it easier to present, sure. I think, like Attorney Laughlin said, that 30 feet at an intersection and making them tow zone.
Sure.
Basically, in New York City, we had don't block the box because it was painted, tow zone, it was painted right in there, and there's no ambiguity about it. And, to Dr. Heller's point, that's, right up to you. It says it right there. You paint it right in the street, tow zone. And I think, Grove Street is something that we have to do, immediately. But I think if we, hit that intersection, even at, West and Union, same thing, 30 feet, tow zone, right? Come off the street, 30 feet. That's going to make that bend coming off better, okay? Down on Pearl Street, down that area, same thing.
And I think on Water Street, you point out,
Yeah.
the
Oh, absolutely.
conflict of where the car's coming out of Oliver.
Right.
And that happens every day.
Quite often, yeah.
Every day.
So
So I'll write them up.
rescind your motion.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. We'll make the motion that we rescind it, just to have the chief come up with the streets that he feels as though that are the most important, that we should tackle soon, and then for us to review and comment at our next meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're all clear on this, and the public is clear on this. We are meeting again on the 6th of October. Chief, you're going to come back to us. 7th, I'm sorry, with a list
Yep.
of streets that you recommend, and then we'll move forward from there.
It sounds great. Yeah, and I think it's going to be more intersection-based with the exception, because that's going to address a lot of the things we talked about, and I think that'll be huge, increasing that intersection tow zone. Grove Street is just a nightmare, the whole thing, where Grove Street's got to change, like the LT said, it's got to happen. But other than Grove Street, I'll write up the intersections, and I think that's a real solid place to start. I think it'll bear fruit for us.
Very good.
Okay?
Okay?
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dr. Too.
Thank you, gentlemen, for
Thank you,
coming in.
Ralph.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Teller.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Spoke to you about.
Yeah.
I'll see you next week.
Said it's a group home.
Thank you,
It's a group home.
Okay, as we move forward,
Like,
next agenda item is Town Administrator's Report.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just 2 very short items. One is just, I was going to remind the board, we are going to meet next Monday, October 7th. The other one is just another update on the municipal aggregation plan. As you know, the plan filed by the town of Milford as revised was approved by the DPU, Department of Public Utilities. Our consultant, Good Energy, did initiate the bidding process. Bids were received on September 24th. They are being evaluated by Good Energy. I can tell you, we are excited by the rates we did receive from 3 prospective bidders. The rate likely, we're looking at a possible 3-year fixed term so that things won't change quickly. I can assure you they will be significantly less than the current national grid rate if these bids hold. The current national grid rate is 0.6055 per kilowatt hour. We do now expect the plan will be launched in December, so hopefully in advance for the upcoming winter season. Letters will be mailed to Milford residents with an explanation of the 3 products that are available. There'll be a basic plan, and the difference is whether or not they use renewable energy. The basic plan does not. A standard plan uses 10% renewable energy, and a plus plan uses 100% renewable energy. Some people will request those plans.
Sure they will, yeah.
For whatever personal reason they would like to do that. Information will be posted on the town website. I did speak with a representative from Good Energy today. We're going to be scheduling a public information session for the community well in advance of the launch. I expect that to be the end of October or the first week in November, and then the launch in December. I hope to be, Town Council Murray is going to firmly review the contract that we now have. So, again, I think it's good news. I'll have much more definitive information, if not next week, the first week in November.
Sure. Thank you.
And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Anybody have any?
No, I think that was great.
No questions at all.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rick.
Oh, one other thing, if I could.
Yes,
I'm sorry. Town Council Murray is here. I would like to bring up under old business, there is one more revision to the Sierra Natural agreement. It is technical in nature, so if we could maybe just get it done quickly. He'll tell you it's not that substantive, but I'm going to let him deal with it, if I could, real quickly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman, board members, I think, as all of you know, right now the Cannabis Control Commission is not really a effective, viable agency. So it's been very frustrating for Attorney Fernandez, representing Sierra Naturals, to try to get a definitive sense as to what they want in these agreements. So after we made the last changes to the agreements, which Sierra was led to believe by the CCC that those would be acceptable, they came back with some other changes, and the only changes on this now third amendment before you, and I mean, it's almost laughable. It has to spell in there that no community impact fee shall exceed 3% of the gross sales, which is part of the law. Why it needs to be restated in agreement is beyond me. And also that Sierra Naturals has to pay taxes, water and sewer charges, like all other Milford residents and businesses. Don't ask.
And businesses, sure.
You know, so, I mean, this is what they wanted in the agreement. You know, Attorney Fernandez, you know, he tried to reach out to them again and say, look, if we get this signed, will this be acceptable? And they wouldn't commit to that. But this is the areas of deficiency that they wanted to address, the fact that the fee can't exceed 3%, which again is stated clearly in the statute, and also that the business is responsible to pay taxes, charges to the water department and the sewer department.
Okay.
So we're looking for signatures on this now third amendment, and then Sierra will also sign. Attorney Fernandez will submit to CCC again, and we will keep our fingers crossed.
Just
We'll require a
signatures?
motion, too, if we could, yeah.
Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the third amendment to the first amended host community agreement for Sierra Naturals, Inc., as presented by Town Council.
I second that, Mr. Chairman, as well.
And I would make that unanimous.
Or your pen first.
CCC not at work.
Thanks, Brian.
Okay, next agenda item under new business is the Doubletree Hotel looking for a one-day wine and malt license for a community event. We have the Doubletree Hotel at 11 Beaver Street in Milford. They're holding a community event on the hotel property. It is going to be held on October 5th, 2024. The hours of operation are from 12 to 6 p.m. They expect about 100 people. There is no admission charge. Beer and wine is going to be served, and it will be sold, and the event is open to the general public.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the one-day liquor license for the DoubleTree Hotel in Milford for the Jamson Hospitality event on October 5th, 2024, 12 p.m. to 6 p.m. I think this is an event where we're going to have a number of different community people, but also police and fire department involved.
That's correct.
And touch the truck and things of that nature for kids. So, I would make a motion that we approve.
Yeah, I second that too, Mr. Chairman.
And I would make that unanimous. And one more item under new business is the town administrators looking for approval of the special town meeting warrant.
Warrants in front of you. It will be on the agenda for next week, should you like to comment on articles, et cetera. Right now, we're looking for approval of this warrant, or so that it can go to the town clerk tomorrow. It can be posted on the website, and the Finance Committee can start to review their articles on, I believe, Thursday of this week.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the articles for the special town meeting October 21st, 2024.
And I second that, Mr. Chairman, as well.
And I would make that unanimous.
Thank you.
Next agenda item is invitation to speak. Is anybody here for invitation to speak? Dr. Helms?
Yes, I just want to bring up something. I spoke with Selectman O'Laughlin about it, and also to Mr. Mazzucchelli. On Congress Street, 123 Congress, which is the old Hyman Hill property that was then owned by George Pine family, and now it's not sure what it is, and nobody seemed to know. I know that for a while there's just a lot of people coming and going. There's anywhere from 4 to 5 cars up to 9 cars at a time that are parked in the driveway. This is right across from the school. Initially, my wife and I thought, we didn't know what was going on with it, but we looked on tax records and just had a name, didn't have anything there. So I understand it's some type of group home, but my thing is, how did that get to be across from a school and in a residential neighborhood, and where we have the laws that limit so many people to live in a facility on that? And I just wanted some answers, and I think that it's worthwhile for the public to be aware that what we have in town, or whatever it is, to be fine, but there's constant different cars coming. I've seen several cars in there at different times with Commonwealth of Mass plates on it. So it just, it's a deeply residential area, and I just wondered if anybody knew had any, other than to tell me it's a group home or something on that. We didn't know somebody was trafficking people in there or whatever. But
Yeah.
I think that
I don't know, unless Rick knows or Brian, but I just heard, that it was
Don't know off the top of my head.
a group home.
I would like some definitive answers, though. I think
Yeah.
that we need to be aware of what that is.
I
How did
certainly
that
can
come
check
by?
into it and hopefully get back to Dr. Heller. Sure.
Sure.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I heard it was a group home for special needs, from what I understand. Again, it had no permit from the Board of Health or anything like that. It didn't need one. But again, it's, I believe, a division of a State Department on the idea of Evergreen and the Kennedy Donovan Center and whatnot.
Well, but all those places had to come in before and had to get some kind of approval, if I remember correctly, of Evergreen Center on that initially, is to even be here.
Yeah, well,
They have that. So
again,
my thing is,
I believe
why
it's...
is this being so secretive, and why
Yeah.
can't the public know? And being, they're about 8, 9 houses down from me.
Yeah, I don't know about anybody trying to keep a secret, Doctor, but like I said, I know they have counselors. I know when I had Kennedy Donovan up on Green Street, corner of Green Street and Nolan Ave, the old Bay State cabinets that the Mancinis used to own years ago.
Yeah.
That was a group home for special individuals, and they had counselors there to stay, and every now and then the Department of Mental Health would come and inspect to make sure everything was up to code and the proper procedures were being followed.
No, but I don't think anybody knows what's there and whether this, and particularly the Board of Health, you're on the Board of Health. I understand
Yeah, we didn't have
I would
to,
think that somebody would at least
Yeah.
say, gee, we're coming into town, what do we need? Well, let at least the selectmen know
yeah.
what's here. Because, what else do we know that's here that we really don't know is here?
Yeah,
I just, and again, location-wise,
Well, just like on Lincoln Street, in those brick apartment homes, I know they're shelters, they're called shelters, from what I understand,
well, they had to,
for certain women and whatnot that would use them. And but again, very little is known.
Okay. Rick, you'll look in,
Certainly we'll look into it,
if you
yes.
could, please.
Yes.
All right, Dr. Moore?
appreciate it if you can,
Okay, thank you.
What's the address again,
I
Dr.
mean,
Heller?
whoever is in it, they're keeping the property up, but
Oh, yeah.
again, I just,
You want to know what's going on?
what's going on?
Sure, that makes sense.
Anybody online for invitation to speak? Nobody? Doctor, you're all set?
All set. Thank you,
Good.
gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, next agenda item is correspondence. Does anybody have any correspondence?
No, Mr. Chairman.
I have none,
I
Michael.
do. I have one. Bear with me for a second. This is a letter that was written to us, actually from the Federal Bureau of Investigations. I'm not going to read that letter due to some privacy issues that are within the letter, but it's complimenting one of our detectives. But I'm going to read the letter that was sent to the detective from our police chief, Chief Tassino. Detective Crossan, after reading the letter I received today from the Federal Bureau of Investigations, I was not surprised you continue to work in a fashion that is indicative of great detective work with a passion for public service. Please know that the Milford Police Department command staff is proud to have you as a member of the department. Thank you and congratulations on a job well done. That is in reference to a letter, again, that we received from the FBI, really complimenting this detective on, it was his swift and accurate work that helped two other agencies close an investigation that they were working on. Happened, started, right here in, or finished, with the work that Detective Crossan did. So, Detective, thank you very, very much. To the Milford Police Department, again, great job.
Great job,
Thank you
that's
to
right.
all of you.
Thank you. Thanks for reading that, Michael.
Thank you. And our last agenda item is we do have an executive session tonight. We will not be returning to regular session after we come out of executive session. It will require a roll call vote. It is to receive attorney-client expert communication of legal advice regarding reasonably anticipated litigation or legal issues, the disclosure of which would compromise the town's position, CT Bar Incorporated, doing business as Central Tavern, appeal of a license revocation. And with that, it'll take a roll call vote.
Mr. Chairman, before we go into executive session, I just want to let the public know that I will recuse myself from participating once we go into executive session, because I was not involved in that hearing, and therefore, the information that the board will deal with, I was not directly involved. So I should not have input at this stage. So I would make a motion that we go into executive session for the purposes as you stated, Mr. Chairman.
I second that, Mr.
And I would make that unanimous.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And with that, we will be going into executive session again. We are not going to be returning to the regular session. So with that, I wish everybody a good evening, and I hope you have a nice week. And thank you very much for watching. Be safe. Thank you.
Goodbye.